everyone, and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem, and I'm really excited to introduce you to our next colouring project as chosen by your good selves, and that is in a book by Hanna Karlzon, who we have not visited for quite some time now. This is the Swedish version. Obviously you can tell this is not in English, but this is Tales from the City in the Stars. And this was gifted to me by the lovely Julia K of Julia K Art Studios, who I'm sure a few of you are familiar with now. Please excuse the weird light balance. It's going from like really bright sunshine to cloudy and back again. It's like in and out. I have pulled the blind down, but there's not much more I can do. Anywho's, so we're going to look at some unicorns today. We've got this lovely double page spread. I did put out a poll for our members. That's one of the perks of being a member of the channel. If you're not and you would like to be, you can click on the link which is down in the description, and that will take you to all the information about becoming a member. The members decided they wanted Pablo pencils to be used for this image, so that is the Caran D'Ache pencils. They're not so commonly seen these days, the Pablos. Again, we talked a bit about the polycolour pencils not that long ago. I kind of feel the same way about Pablos. You don't see them often enough, and they're really good pencils. This is really going to be a mixed media piece. Pablos will be part of that, and I do think it's only fitting that we use some of Julia K's paints in the book, considering she gifted it to me. Obviously, unicorns and Julia K's paints go hand in hand. Do your just shiny bits on your unicorns. But before we even get to that point, before we even remotely get to that point, the first thing that I want to do is to get out some black acrylic paint. So we're going to get stuck right in here, and I want to make this background of the clouds black, so it really is just this top section here. The reason for that is I want to use some really nice pale pastel colours and some of Julia's metallic paints on the actual unicorns, and obviously black's about as much contrast as you're going to get with like more pastel-y colours, so that's the reasoning. These clouds are also going to be very dark blues and purples as well, to give that sort of nighttime feel. And what that does is that's going to let our unicorns really pop out on the page. So to make this easy for myself, and it's been a long time since I've done this, and I seem to like to do it in Hannah's books, I'm taking student grade acrylic paint straight from the tube. This is the Winsor & Newton Galleria acrylic paint. It's really good. I really like it. It's relatively easy to use, and I've got two paint brushes here. You can use any type of synthetic brush. These are specifically brushes that I like to use for acrylic, and these are the Artful paint brushes. They're really good. So I've got a flat one here, and this is one of their number 8 flats, and I've also got a smaller round brush which is a number 3, and that's just to help me on my way around some of these feathered edges, because there's a wee bit of to and fro needed there. The other thing you can do with this, if you're really not comfortable or you feel like you're not that skilled with a paintbrush, you can use a flat brush like this to do the majority and just leave yourself a little margin round where your line work is, and you can go in there with a Posca pen and finish it off with a black or any other black acrylic marker for that matter. I would advise against using the likes of a Posca for the full thing, because that's a pretty expensive way. These tubes of acrylic paint are dirt cheap. That's why I like to use them. So say straight from the tube, no messing about, just squeeze it out and off we go. As usual, I will start on the right hand side because I am left-handed. If you are right-handed, start the opposite way and then you've got no worries. The other thing I nearly forgot about there is always have a sheet of paper underneath. Always have a sheet of paper in behind if you're working right to the edge, and that stops it transferring onto the other sheets in your colouring book. So off we go. Nice thick coverage. So you can see here with the flat brush, I am going to work my way around fairly quickly, because I'm able to cover a large area with it. We don't want this taking all day. I like to smooth this out as well. Being acrylic paint, it will leave texture on your paper. You have to be aware of that. But this is very flat matte paint, this. You do get glossier acrylic paints, but it tends to dry fairly flat, which means the texture thing isn't so much of a big deal. So I'm just getting as close in as I can with the with this flat brush, again into that gutter layer as best I can. There's something really satisfying about this as well, like I really enjoy it. It's really important to clean off any acrylic off your brushes as quickly as possible, because it will harden and then you're kind of into problems that you don't really need. So I've got a tiny wee bit of water here, And I'm just going to give that a quick rub-a-dub-dub. It doesn't need to be super clean, it just needs to be not caked in paint. You can wash it properly when you're finished, obviously. And then I just get an old rag here and just take off as much of the excess as possible. Because I'm going to set that one to the side and use the round brush just now. So it's not, you can see it's not completely clean, but that's mostly water in there. That'll survive like that until I'm ready to go on to the other page. So switching over to my round brush now. It's kind of helpful, if you're going to do it the same way as I've done, it's kind of helpful to have a round brush that's got quite a pointy point on it. But now I'm just working my way around, and this is the part where you've got to be a little bit more careful. If you go slightly over the lines, it's really not going to matter because you're working in black anyway. It just depends on the subject matter of which the lines you go over, if you see what I'm saying. See, I know some of you would rather do this with a really chunky fine liner, or going in with the likes of a Molotov or like a Posca marker or something. Obviously that's absolutely fine, there's no hassle. I quite like to use a paintbrush. One of the things I do find with using acrylic brushes for this, you can use a smaller brush. You all know I like a teeny tiny paintbrush, but they don't hold as much paint and the paint tends to dry quite quickly on them. So you kind of have to hurry a little bit more if you've got a smaller brush. That's why I prefer to go for something a bit larger and just take my time. And you can see there a little bit of paint is going quite a long way on the end of this brush, so there is quite a lot to be said for the humble paintbrush in this instance. Excuse me, a little sneeze came from nowhere. Okay, so we're coming to a little bit of a trickier part now. We've got to navigate round the ends of these wings. Again, fine liner round here, even if you still want to use a paintbrush, but you're maybe just not quite brave enough to paint right up to the edge of the line work. Even a kind of chunkier fine liner, and just to thicken these actual lines of the feathers, for example, that's a really good way of doing it if you are trying to sort of improve on your brush skills, but you don't want to risk it. Maybe you're worried you might just not manage. That's a really good thing to do as well, is just thicken up the actual line work on the drawing with a pen. And then you can still use your paintbrush. You're just not, so if you have any unexpected twitches, which again, something I'm very familiar with, the consequences might just not be quite as disastrous. I always encourage people to try though. You don't know, you're not going to get any better unless you keep doing it. And you're not going to keep doing it unless you try. So, you just go for it. But I know a lot of people kind of get quite hung up on stuff like this. And you have to remember, it's just a sheet of paper. Nobody's going to die. And if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, you'll usually learn a lesson from it all the same. So it's worthwhile seeing it through to the end just for that, because you will learn something. And even if that something is just something never to do ever again, then cool, that's still, still a lesson all the same. I really like Hannah's depiction of wings on a unicorn here. They're just right. they're just right. I really like them. Okay, so this is going to be interesting in here. We gonna try. Let's start in there. Now I have to say the bulk of the paint that I've put down with the flat brush up the top here, most of that's dry already. This is one of the reasons why I like using acrylic. And I think, this is really the only time I would use acrylic paint in a colouring book. Somebody was talking about using acrylic pens in sketchbooks the other day, and that's something that I would never ever use acrylic paint pens in a sketchbook, but I would love to see a sketchbook of finished work using paint pens. Does that make sense? I hope so. I think that would be a spectacle. The thing is as well though, I'm quite proficient with the old Poscas. I've done quite a lot of stuff with them. I've done shop fronts and I've done trainers. You guys will have seen the last video with the painting on the glass, the goldfish, which I've actually done another one of just for funsies. So I'm fairly well versed in them, but I don't like to use them in colouring books. I suppose I'm a bit kind of like of a traditionalist, if you like, when it comes to stuff like that. I just feel that coloured pencils are meant for colouring books, and that might take me back to like a childhood thing. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not saying you can't, though, because here I am with some acrylic paint. Okay, I'm going to round brush for a wee minute again. I'm just giving it a quick wipe off there, just to stop it going crispy. And you can see that looks fairly striking already. So if I gently pull this up, there we go. And we'll just leave that to dry off properly. And I'll pop this over the other side. And I can go back to this flat brush now, load it up, and off we go again onto this right hand page. You can see how quickly I'm able to cover that area with this flat brush, so it's really handy. You know, you're not going to spend ages. You know how long it takes with pencil with these sort of things? You all know what I'm talking about. That's an awful lot of paint. I think I've taken that a wee bit too far. Okay, there we go. So same thing again. Get this dipped in the water. And off we go again with this little round brush. Oh, damn it. I had a wee bit of a hand spasm there, but it's right in at the crease there, so that's great when that happens. Not that noticeable. Again, that's one of those things, like, try not to sweat. Like, if you do this and you have a bit of a wobble, don't worry about it. No one, absolutely no one, is going to look at your finished colouring page and be like, oh, look, they went over the line in this one spot at the top there at a cloud and at the crease of the book. No one is going to say that, so don't sweat the small stuff. To be fair as well, now when my hand does decide to sort of do its own thing, 9 times out of 10 I usually see the humour in it, because it can be quite funny, especially if you're painting something and you end up, you know, with an extra line, and then you've got the fun of trying to either conceal it or turn it into something that belongs in the picture. That can be quite entertaining and quite creative as well. There's the times when it's not fun is when you're in the middle of a really busy restaurant and you've got a full fork full of food and you drop your fork. Because one of the things with the spasms that I have is quite often my hand goes like that and it kind of like jerks as well, so I'm almost like throwing things. And if you've got company at a table, not only does like the cutlery like clatter down on the table, 9 times out of 10 you're going to spray your fellow diners with food as well. So that's a bit embarrassing and not so great when that happens. But when we're arting, it's actually okay a lot of the time. It's not really a big deal. So yeah, it's really nice to be in this book because it's been such a long time since I've done anything in a Hanna Karlzon book. And she is quite a prolific colouring book artist. You know, she has a lot of books out now. For those of you that don't know Hannah's story, in I think it was early 22, so like last year, she was diagnosed with a brain tumour. And she has been incredibly positive and continued to work really hard and produce even more colouring books despite all of that. So she really is a trooper. And I have so much respect for her. I have noticed, and anyone feel free to chime in on this, the Swedes as a nation of people are very hardy. They're kind of like us Scots a little bit. They take a very sort of no-nonsense approach to things. And it doesn't really matter what happens, you know, there could be like disastrous stuff going on. They just seem to like just put their heads down and, you know, nothing phases them. And I think it's a very admirable trait, but it kind of brings you back to, obviously there is a link, a very strong link between the Scandinavian countries and Scotland, because number one, at one point we would have all been joined up, we would have been part of the same landmass. But not only that, obviously the whole Viking era and the invasion of the Scandinavian people. So I don't know, I think that's maybe why we've got so many similarities. But yeah, Hanna herself, Hanna in particular, her courage and her determination is quite something. So very honoured to be colouring in another one of her books. And quite a few fiddly bits in here. I was thinking I might have to actually go and get a marker for in here, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to be brave. Yeah, there you go. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, there's the sun back out again. Jeez, I wish the sky would make up its mind today. I really shouldn't complain. We had that horrible hot spell there, and Scottish people are not cut out for, you know, that kind of like sticky, muggy, high heat situation. It has cooled down considerably. It's very comfortable and we're starting to feel quite autumnal. But it's to rain, you know, torrentially tomorrow, so I should really be enjoying what little sunshine we're getting today, because it's all going to disappear so quickly and then I've got a feeling it might not recover itself again. There we go. I've got a few wee bits I'll need to touch up, but that's okay. You can see them, they stand out so much on the camera. Oh, right, there's a little bit there. Blub, blub, blub. A wee tiny bit there. Blub, blub. And a bit here. Blub, 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 blub. Jock actually just woke himself up there. That was funny. And he gave me an accusatory look as if it was me that poked him or disturbed him. Obviously it was not. He's actually over in Pip's chair. Pip's taken to staying back in the lounge, which is like the opposite end of the house. She takes these wee notions and she obviously just wants to be on her own, which is fine. She's quite independent compared to Jock. She comes up periodically, though it's funny because you can hear her trotting along the corridor, and she just comes to make sure we're still here and that we're okay. And she comes and bumps her nose against my leg, and then she goes and bumps Jock on the nose with her nose, and it's just like, "Are you both okay? You still here?" And we're like, "Yes, Pip, we're fine." And then once she's done that, she gets a wee pet, and then she just trots off back down the corridor again. She's really funny. She's the first collie that I've had that's been really independent. You know, she's just a, like, I don't know. Obviously, they've all got their own wee personalities, but I always say Pip's like her own wee person. She just does what she pleases. Not in a naughty way, but just generally. And it's quite nice as a, you know, as a contrast to Jock, who's very needy and very clingy, but he's also very, very affectionate. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. Right, there we go. That's looking fairly good. Right, what I want to do now is put my paint away. Again, I've rinsed off those brushes. They're fairly clean, but I will go and give them a really good proper clean once we're finished here to make sure I've got every last little bit of acrylic out to save the lifespan of my paintbrushes. What I would like to do now is demonstrate to you what I'm going to do with the clouds. So I think time-wise, we'll maybe do 1 or 2 clouds, and then what I will do is I will do the rest of them in my spare time. So we're going to pick out some colours. I do not have these Pablos swatched out in my swatch book. That was actually supposed to be a live stream at one point. Maybe we'll make that in a live stream, or maybe I could do that in one of the Whip Wednesdays. That was probably a better idea. So look at this lovely selection of moody colours that I've picked out for the clouds. Like, oh, it's so good. This makes me really happy. I'm not sure 100% if I'm going to use all of these colours. You have the beauty of being able to fast forward the video and find out and then come back and go through if you're following along. But this is provisional. I'll also have an extra 3 pencils off to the side if I decide to change things up again. So the colours that we've got here, bearing in mind that this is the Pablos, you may not have these colours. But I am going to give you them, and I'm going to show you the swatches of them as well, just so that you can pick out something similar if you don't have Pablos. So let's start with the greys first then. So I have got Steel Grey, which is 004, Mouse Grey, which is 006, Greyish Black, which is 008, and I've got Dark Grey, which is 007. And I've got a couple of bluish purple colours as well. I've got Prussian Blue, which is 159, and I also have Indigo Blue, which is more of a purpley blue in this instance compared to the Prussian Blue. You can see it on the barrel there. And that is 139. So I'll just show you some swatches here. Here are all of your greys that we're looking for. So they've got quite a bluish tint to them, a few of them. Again, you can pause this and try and match up something similar. The colours on the camera are pretty true to what I'm seeing with my bare eyeballs. I've also got the Prussian Blue here as well, which I don't know, I wouldn't say is necessarily a Prussian Blue, but that's what they're calling it. And then I've also got this Indigo Blue here, which is very, very purpley. And you can see the 3 other colours I've got spare are Aubergine, Royal Blue and Violet. Aubergine eggplant, for those of you in the States, we call it an aubergine. Random, but I don't know if I want to really introduce the dark purples. I'll see how I go. So I'm just going to demonstrate technique over a couple of clouds. As I said earlier, I will finish off at least one side in my spare time before we come back next week and you know, jog on with some more. My acrylic paint's nice and dry now as well, and you can see there's not a hint of anything. The page is a little bit wrinkly, but it's not going to affect the other side for colouring if you want to go and do that. So we've got lots of little sections down here, and then this part here, these are much wider, especially this top part here. So I'd like to use the grey colours on the bulk of the larger clouds. So I'm going to start with the steel grey. That is my lightest grey colour. That's this very top one here. Again, another way you could do this if you don't have the Pablos is to pick a palette of cold or warm greys. If you've got, for example, the Prismacolor or the Polychromos sets or similar, you could do it that way, and you could pick from a cold palette or a warm palette. It's entirely up to you what you want to do with your clouds. Okay, so let's tackle this big section at the top here on the right. I'm going to carry this on because that's clearly the same cloud all the way over. So I might just do that rather than sticking to this page. So the first idea obviously is that we put down a layer of this lighter grey. This is going to be quite difficult to see, especially next to black. It looks as if I'm not putting anything down, but I promise you I am. Try and work around these stars and whatnot. One thing I am going to do is I will be adding stars up here in this black bit with probably a little bit of gouache or maybe a white Posca pen, something like that, once we're finished. After all, the book is called Tales from the City and the Stars, so you know. Right, so there we go. There's a section in itself because it's blocked off by the unicorn's horn, so that's excellent. If I take my next grey down, which is my mouse grey, I'm going to use that for the bulk of the clouds. Now with storm clouds, the bottom of the clouds tend to be darker, you know, where the sort of precipitation's hanging. I'm going to use the mouse grey as the darker colour here, and then I'm going to use the greyish black as kind of like just a shadow pencil, if you like. So with my mouse grey, I want to start shaping where I want the dark areas and the lighter areas. So the closer to the bottom of the cloud I go, that's like where I want it to be pretty dark. And then we can lighten it up here. The lighter areas I am only going to have like a sort of thin band. I do want the bulk of the background to be quite dark. I'm using this pencil to mark out where I want that dark area to stop and where I want the lighter area to start. Now obviously, again, because this is greys as well, we've got quite a lot of room to chop and change our mind. We can just build these layers up really gradually. So yeah, to about there, I would think. You all know I'm a big fan of just taking a section at a time. That is a very manageable section, even when you're trying to work on blending stuff out. So now the next step that I would take here is trying to figure out how intense and how dark I actually want this. And I've got a feeling I'm going to want it to be a lot darker than I've got in my mind, if that makes sense. Generally, as a person, and it must just be the way that my brain is wired up, and the way that I see things and the way I process it in my mind, but I find quite often my finished result is a lot lighter or desaturated than I initially intended. And I found this out through actually drawing dog portraits when I first started doing that in graphite. I'm not talking about coloured pencil, I'm talking about graphite. And I always found that the portraits, when I thought I was finished, they were a lot lighter than I needed them to be. There, you know, there wasn't enough contrast because I was just working in graphite. And what that taught me was that I can afford to be braver with my my shade depths, because in my mind's eye, things are a lot darker than I've actually got them on paper. And that's something that I've learned to kind of counterbalance over the years, you could say. I'm using this little ducat as like my test area, and I'm just finding out how dark I'm actually going to go. And I can tell you now that's not dark enough. That's me reaching the limit of the pencil. So this is where I'm going to bring in my greyish black, which is the darker black again, the darker grey again. So there's the mouse grey that we've been using, and here's the greyish black. So this is what's going to give us the impact. So I'm going to start working away. Again, start tucked right in next to the line work. Now the nice thing as well is if we work in scumbling motion, so this circular motion with this pencil, it's actually going to give us quite a nice cloud texture if we choose not to completely smooth it out, which is kind of cool. Okay, yeah, that's more like what I'm looking for. You know, it looks a bit angrier down in there. So with this particular section now, just this little indent part here, I'm going to work away for a little bit with this greyish black. And as I sort of reach the mouth of this little indented section, I'm going to kind of ease up a little bit. And then I'm going to go back in with this mouse grey. And this is the thing about the Pablos, like these pencils blend so easily. so easily. There's been loads of conversations about the makeup of these pencils, and for a long time it was thought that these were oil-based pencils. Now, apparently, there was at one point, because I remember reading the description, and I'm talking like 5 or 6 years ago. I remember reading a description that said that the pencils have oil in the in the makeup, in the recipe, if you like. And I think people took that as they were an oil-based pencil, because normally if you have an element of oil in a pencil, it's generally referred to as an oil-based pencil. However, someone else had said that it had been kind of lost in translation, and that was the problem. I have looked into it, and if you speak to someone at Caran D'Ache now, they will tell you that it is a wax-based pencil. So there you go. But if you look back at some of the information from 5 or 6 years ago, pencils were described as oil based. But I think it was just taken in the wrong context. Because normally, if there's more, because even oil-based pencils have wax in them. Obviously, they have wax in them. But if the sort of general rule of thumb is if there's more oil than wax, then it's considered an oil-based pencil. Even though it's got wax in it. And I think that was the part that became a grey area. Grey area. No pun intended. Oh, sorry, that was terrible. So there you go. Taking that into consideration. So upon finding out this information, I have taken down my review of the Pablo pencils, because in that review I have stated that these are oil-based pencils. I've taken it down, and I'm basically just going to put a disclaimer in at the start. I'm not going to refilm the whole video. It's still a decent review video, but I'm just going to put in a notice at the start, just so that we're not misinforming anyone, because we don't want that. So I'll be putting that back up probably in about 2 weeks' time. I'm quite busy with videos and stuff just now, so it'll have to wait. So you can see where I'm going with this. I'm popping that mouse grey up till about here, and then we've got our original grey. And I'm just going to use that to top that off. And again, this is going to blend beautifully. Now, to be fair, these pencils themselves, buying them here in the UK, they are expensive. I'm not going to lie to you. These are everything from Caran D'Ache is expensive. And I understand why a lot of people don't have these pencils, but they're quietly very, very good. I like them a lot. And most of you will know as well that before we moved to the Cave Mark III, I had a huge clear out. And one of the things I did was let go of a lot of the coloured pencils that I just wasn't using. And it's not because they were terrible pencils. The reason that I held on to them in the first place is because they weren't terrible pencils. But I had to make that choice to get rid of some stuff. Just because we were moving to a much smaller house. And I wanted to have as little as possible to actually physically move. Because it was quite a distance from the old place to the new place. So I was quite ruthless, but the fact that I kept a hold of these Pablos tells you, they really are, they're good pencils. I couldn't quite bear to part with my Schmincke watercolour. I did think about selling them, and I changed my mind, and I was like, no, I can't do it. So I've still got them. Not even that I watercolour that often, but it's nice to have a good set of paints. If the fancy tickles me, I have to say as well, these pencils feel really nice on this paper. It's very, very smooth. So I don't want to be too careful about my my textures and my blending. Again, with storm clouds, there are going to be lighter bits and darker bits and kind of fluffy bits, and so we don't want to be too regimented about it, but we do want to have some sort of loose idea of what's going on. So you can play about with that a little bit, So I feel like this is going to be, although it's in against the line work of the image, the bottom of this cloud's away down here. So I feel as if I don't need to use the greyish black here. I've just spied this little bit under the chin of this one, and I'm going to take this opportunity just to do that while I've spotted it. So not using the lightest colour at all here, starting off with the mouse grey. When there's pictures like this where there's quite a lot going on, sometimes it's a good idea to just go for it when you see it, Back with my greyish black here, just lining the bottom of these clouds with this. Bring this up a little bit higher, just in a few sections here and there. See, this is the thing about this. These pencils, they do blend so well. So, look, how nice is that? I was just like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I'm fine. Don't mind me over here. It's a bit of a harsh line there, though. And then just go back to my darkest grey now and really darken down that bottom section. Okay, quite happy with that as a starting point. Let's just zoom out, take a little look now. Ooh. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. That's going to be quite impactful when we take it down this entire page, especially this section here. This is a big beast of a section. That's going to be quite interesting to work with. So I think what I'll try and do for next time is I will finish off this cloud section here. And in the next video, we'll tackle this and I'll show you how I would do it because that's quite a big area. And then we'll focus on just this unicorn here, and that would maybe be a good effort for our next video, and we can take it from there. I want to thank you all very much for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out. And yeah, I shall see you back in the cave on Sunday for another video. So have a great day, everyone, and bye-bye for now.